Greetings and welcome to Sparkles and Blessings. I'm Ducky and I'd like to thank you for joining me here today. Um, I am on a quest to have 500 stories for my grandchildren because that's exactly what my grandfather did when I was a little girl. He told me stories. He had a booklet of 500 stories that he had either lived through or experienced or somebody had told him. And he kept this little blue notebook in his front breast pocket of his jacket. And if I was around, like they lived far away, if I was around, I would ask him every day to tell me a story, and he would. And sometimes I'd get two stories, and on a very good day, I would get three stories. That was amazing. So I started this about a year ago, and I think I'm on about story 60 or so. I'll have to take account pretty soon. But I wanted basically just to make sure that I nailed down the most important story of all, um, because it is a wonderful story. I lived through it, and I can't believe that I'm so blessed to have been a part of it. Uh, I began the story last week where I told three different segments, and I'm picking up to the story. If you haven't seen them, uh, I'd like to ask you to go see them. You don't have to because nothing is really out of sequence at this time. So you're welcome to tag along with me as I go on with this story. And the beginning of this particular story finds us in a little town called Oberurbach, Germany, where I was visiting my grandparents, my maternal grandparents. My mother was there with us, and she was going to stay for 2 weeks. And it was basically decided pretty early in the trip that my mother would take me and my grandparents, and we would go visit my great grandparents. And they lived quite a ways away. I would say 3 hours away by car. It was a long car ride, and and they lived in a '60s retirement home. And this was the '60s. If you've been in a retirement home in the hospital or some rest homes, they're they kind of shake your belief in the system. But this was back in the '60s, and basically these people were given four walls, a bed, and a table, and they lived very lonely lives. And my grandmother, great grandmother, and great grandfather were lucky to have each other there and their faith to basically keep their heads about them and to keep their priorities straight. And I know my grandfather wrote a lot of letters to them. Now, my great grandmother was known as a healer in her younger days. She would be the town healer. People would come to her and seek out what to do about my little boy's cough or my little girl's fever, and she was very successful. But then again, it was all about the prayer to her, and yes, her name was Dorothea, and my great grandfather's name was Theophil, which was the same name as my father. So, so we go and we take this big drive to the town where my great grandparents' rest home was, and we arrive, and there's hugs, an effusion of hugs and tears and kisses, and it was wonderful. It was just something that you think back on and wonder, was I really that loved? And and so I got to meet my great grandmother, who was a tiny little woman, a tiny little woman, and she was bent. She was bent over from age, and she was very quiet. always with a pleasant countenance. My great grandfather was a big, burly man, very tall, and he was a little intimidating, and he had these big, bushy eyebrows and big white mustache, like they did in the old days. And and so there we were. And it was decided also that the following day, Sunday morning, they would all attend church together, except for my great grandmother and for myself. And I wasn't happy about that. When I remember when my mother left, I cried and I was not happy and I felt bad. I thought, goodness, what does my grandmother think of me? And but anyway, she was a wise old woman, and while I was crying and upset, she went and got herself a pail, went into the kitchen, and counted out some potatoes for a big bucket. And she sat herself down at the table and called me. And I sat down, and I was still sniffly. And she said, "Everything's going to be okay. You'll be okay. You'll be okay." And she said, "Do you like stories?" And I said, "Oh, yes, I like stories." I told her that my grandfather, her son, told me stories all the time, and this made her happy. She smiled and nodded as she continued to peel her potatoes. And she said, "Would you like to hear another story? How about I tell you a story?" And I thought, "Oh, yes, yes." And I was all smiles now because my great grandmother was going to tell me a story. All was forgotten. Uh, it was all rainbows for me inside because I was going to hear a new story and get to know my great grandmother at the same time. So here we are, 7 minutes into the video, and I have been holding this phone up long enough. My arm is really sore. So I'm going to cut that right here, and I will pick it up again, and we will carry on. I want to thank you for joining me here on Sparkles and Blessings. I hope you have a great day. Ducky out.